going to talk about two great freeware contributions to the hobby. We'll talk about N1MM Plus, the logging software, and we'll talk about Morris Runner, the simulation software. And then there's something in between that I'll say a little bit about that glues those together so that you could do your keystrokes in N1MM Plus like you would at a real contest. But it will go over to Morris Runner and trigger the simulation. So let me say a word about what I'm going to do and not going to do tonight. As I was thinking about what to present here, I realized that you've got to get set up in order to do this, and there are several steps. And that material is better done on paper. So if you go to the website, you'll find a presentation for tonight by me that talks about, well, it gives an overview of the whole presentation, and then in the back there's step-by-step how to set up N1MM Plus and get it in the state you need it to be to do what I'm going to show you tonight. Okay. So those more familiar, it is set up for the CQ WPX CW contest. And that's because that's the only one that the simulation supports. So it's not exactly the same keystrokes and so on as what we use on field day, but it's close enough to do the job, and I think you'll be pretty impressed with the simulation. I just almost can't say enough good things about N1MM Plus. Its job in life for a contest is to minimize the effort that you have to do in order to get the things that you need to have recorded for the contest written down. It also has a set of contesting aids, among one of the most important. It helps you identify if a contact that you're contemplating has already been made on the same band. And of course, when you have multiple operators or multiple stations as we do, that's a very important function. There's a lot more to it that I'm going to have time to talk about tonight, so we may do a session just on N1MM and some of its other features someday. Now, what I would like to do before I do the simulation, since we have people who are new both to contesting and N1MM, is give you a slow walkthrough of N1MM before I start it in simulation mode, because when we do that, that goes a little bit too fast to go through the detail that I want to go through. Okay, we have two N1MM windows open, these two, and I've already put some contacts in for practice, and you'll notice that it records the day, the call, frequency, sent and received, signal report, which, like in most contests, is always going to be 599. And what these are the exchange required for this particular contest. And this is something that differs from contest to contest. But for this one, the exchange is the signal report plus a serial number. So on your first contact, you're going to send 001, then 002, and so on. And the person on the other end is going to send his serial number back to you. So you see over here towards the right, the prefix is recorded. In this contest, prefixes, working multiple prefixes is the goal. So you would get what's called a multiplier for each separate prefix that you work. And just to talk really quickly about how contests are scored, typically each contact you make has a point value, and often it's 1 for US stations and 3 for DX stations, and it's like that here. Okay, so one part of your score is the sum of all the points, but there are also things called multipliers. And in this particular contest, there's one multiplier for each distinct prefix. So the first K6 is going to count more in your score than the second K6 because the first one is going to give you the multiplier for that prefix. Okay, so the way it works is that you add up the points, you add up the number of multipliers, and then, like the name suggests, you multiply them together, and that's your score. And N1MM is keeping track of your score according to the rules of the contest as you progress. So these red check marks are saying that these particular call signs, which are all DX call signs, and all, which is why there are 3 points, and all were unique so far, and that's why they're all multipliers. Okay, let me go ahead down here. This is the window where you're going to enter data, and you notice that the first field doesn't have a label, and that's, I guess, because there's more than one thing that sometimes gets entered in that field, but most of the time, for our purposes, it's going to be where the call sign goes. Okay? And let me just do one. You're not going to hear any Morse code yet because it's not hooked up yet, but I want to go through each piece and tell you what's going to happen at each stage. Now, first thing I need to do to get started is change the mode in N1MM. N1MM has 2 modes called run and search and pounce, and what those translate to is, are you calling CQ or are you answering a CQ? And the reason that that's important is because the messages are different. So I'm going to switch it to run because that's the only mode that the simulation supports. Okay. I also have N1MM configured for what's called enter sends message mode, and I'll tell you what that means. You see here a set of function keys, and in N1MM you can send these various messages, and these are the likely messages that you would send during a contest, either by pressing the function key or by mousing and clicking with the mouse on these various boxes. However, the mouse does not work in the simulation. So if you need one of these function key messages, use the function key. That's what the script can pick up. Okay. In enter sends message mode, the enter key is going to send the message that it thinks is the most likely message to send at the point where you are in the interaction with the other party. Okay, now, it may not always be picking what you really need, in which case you've got to go and hit the right function key on your own. It tells you what it's about to do by highlighting the function key. So now I'm in the box where I'm going to enter the call sign. There's no call sign there, so N1MM is saying, hey, you need to send a CQ. Okay, so if I press enter, it's going to send a CQ, and if I press enter again, it's going to send another one. So as long as that box is empty, enter is going to send the CQ message. Now, if I get an answer, I'm going to type the call sign in that box. So let's pick a call sign, K6BFA, say. All right. Now, look what's happened to the function keys. There are 2 that are lit up. F5 says his call, and F2 says exchange. So what it's going to send now, if I press enter, has changed. It's going to send K6BFA, 599, and the serial number, which right now would be 032. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do after it sends that is listen, because I'm expecting him to send back perhaps R for Roger, and then 599, and then whatever his serial number is going to be. Okay, so now there's something you need to know about N1MM to get the next step right. Okay, when I hear the R, I know that he's not complaining about the call sign that I sent, and he's going to send me an exchange which I want to record. So it's not the tab, it's the space bar. So in N1MM, space bar is a smart tab, and what it does is say, hey, look it, I know that you're going to send 599. I know you're going to hear 599. I know what the number is because I'm smart and I'm managing the number. So all I need is the number that you hear from him. So if you press spacebar, it's going to go over to the field that it thinks that you're most likely to need. Now you can go into these other fields and overtype the sent and received and so on, you know, if you have to, but that's not going to occur in this simulation. Okay, so that's the difference between tab and enter. If I'm back here and I tab, see, I'm going to go there. Well, I don't want to be there. You know, I want to be there. Okay, so that's a little bit about N1MM keys, and that's one of the things that takes getting used to. So at first you're going to, you know, have to think, okay, now is this something I do an enter for or a space bar for and get it wrong a few times, and then, you know, after you've worked with this for a while, that'll become second nature, which is the point of a simulator. The other thing I wanted to just mention here is you see the K6BFA turned red, and in some systems red is bad. Well, in N1MM, red is good. Okay, it's not as good as green, but it's better than blue. So those are the three things that may happen. I don't think that green is possible in this particular contest, but blue means, you know, it's a regular point value, but it is not a multiplier in this case because you already have that prefix. Okay, red means it's one multiplier. In some contests, one station can give you two multipliers. I don't think that's possible here because there's only one prefix involved. Okay, so what I will do, well, before I do anything else, let's look at what the function keys are doing. Okay, so it says, all right, you're going to enter a number. If you didn't get the number, you're going to want him to send it again. So if I press enter at this point in time without the box filled in, okay, it's going to send again. And that's what the highlight is telling you. All right. Now, if I put a number in here, say is number 12, look what happened to the function keys. All right, two are lit, log it, and thank you. Right, so you're going to here da-da-da-da, and it's going to log it, and see, there it is in the log. Let's see. Just for fun, let me put in K6BFA again. Okay, and you see this time it didn't come up blue or red or green, it came up gray and the word dupe appeared. Okay, because he doesn't want to be called by me again on the same band. And then he's going to do whatever he does. There are two philosophies, you know, one is go ahead and work him and the other is yell at him for being a duplicate. Okay. But of course, if you had multiple stations, as I said, you might not have any way of knowing otherwise that this was going to be a duplicate. Okay, let's see. Let's talk just quickly about frequency. It's going to record the frequency. The easiest way to get that to happen is to interface N1MM to your rig and let it read the frequency. If you're not going to do that, you put the frequency in this window. So if I put 7,000 in there, you see now it is switched. You might be able to see over on the left, it's saying what band it thinks you're in. Okay, it's also switched back to S&P mode, so let me put it back. All right. Well, I think we are ready to rock and roll. There's one more thing I want to tell you about if you're new to contesting. I told you it was going to send 599 and the serial number. Well, it's going to do it in what are called cut numbers. So it's not going to send 599, it's going to send 5NN. And by convention, N means 9 in the number fields of the, I've heard them both in the signal report and when appropriate in the receive number. Now also in the receive number, both you and the other side are going to send 3 digits. However, when you get started, the first 2 are 0. So what you're going to hear is not da 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 da. You're going to hear a long dash if it's electronic. If the guy is using a key or he doesn't have a long dash position, it's just going to send a T. So if you hear a T or a long dash, that's a 0. Okay, now to get this to go, I need to do a couple more things. I need to set the parameters, as Pete mentioned, over here in Morris Runner. So for purposes of the demo and for purposes of me being able to get through this, I've set this to the easiest level, which is 10 words per minute, and all these band condition problems turned off. Okay, and if you're new to this and just getting your feet wet, that's what I suggest. Activity level, I need to explain that. This is the average number of respondents to a CQ. Okay, it is not the maximum number, it's the average number. And sometimes the response is going to be 0. Okay, so to get an average of 1, sometimes it's going to be 2 or maybe 3 in our little demo tonight. Now, if you crank this up to 3 or 4 or 5 and raise the speed and check all the boxes, well, if you're a beginner, you'll say, I'll never say the word CW again in my life. Okay, because it is really a very busy environment. So I suggest you not do that unless you're an experienced person. Okay, so I'm going to set it at 1 and turn all these off, and now I'm almost ready to go. There's one more thing. There's a piece of software that glues these two together, and it is called Autohotkey, and I have on my desktop a link to the Autohotkey script, and all I have to do is double click it to get it started. Now, there may be a possible point of confusion here, because if you search the internet, there is a script for N1MM without the plus. That's the older version of N1MM. It will not work. Okay, but if you've got N1MM plus installed, you also have the script. It's in one of the directories that N1MM plus installed, and the aforementioned slides that I have out on our website tell you exactly where to go to find that script. Okay, so let me double click this guy, and now if you look down in the very lower right hand corner of the screen, you'll see a green background with a white H on top. Yeah.
So when you find that script in whatever folder it's in, you just copy that to the desktop then? Is that what that is?
Well, you could copy it to the desktop. I actually put a link to it on the desktop. It doesn't matter. But you go to my slides, you go to the URL for Autohotkey, you go through a regular Windows install, no complications for it. And then in the registry, it'll put the .ahk extension that it uses in the registry, so the computer knows if I see an AHK file double clicked, I turn on Autohotkey. Okay, so my script is running, my other programs are up. The first thing you have to do to kick things off, and let me get more comfortable with the keyboard here, is you click Run over here and select Pile Up. All right, and now you hear white noise in the background. All right, so it's ready to go, and we don't need to do anything more with that window. All right, now, I'm going to see if I can raise a couple of answers from the robot here, and I'm hoping that we just use routine contacts for the first go-round, but I don't know what the simulator is going to send me, so if it's something else, I'll try to deal with it. CQ, my call sign the word test, short for contest. So I'm sending the exchange. So that's all there was to it. Okay. Now at this point, sometimes you'll hear another station called because they know you just completed a queue, so sometimes you'll have to call CQ again. See, we're running short on time, so let me talk a little bit about what to do if not everything goes smoothly. All right. So when you type in the call sign and send the exchange, various things could happen. All right. One, you don't hear anything. Well, you could try the exchange again, and then if you still don't hear anything, I would say go down here and click wipe and start over. Wipe will remove the call sign. Now, you might hear him come back to you, but with a different call sign than what you recorded. In that case, you just change the call sign, press enter again, and it'll send the exchange, to the correct call sign.
You say enter, you mean the space bar?
No, the enter key, because you're still over here. So if I enter K6 BFB, and he comes back to me with K6 BFQ, what I'm going to do is change it, and then I'm going to send him the exchange to the correct call sign. Okay, you see it's going to do the exchange. Okay, now
If you hit the space bar.
no, if I hit enter. Okay, the way it works is here, enter on a blank box, send CQ. Once I put it in a call sign, okay, now enter is going to send the exchange.
Okay.
So what the enter key does depends on the state of the box that it's sitting in. Okay. Now another thing that could happen is that he sends again, question mark, NR question mark, or something to indicate that he heard you were there, but he didn't copy what he needs to out of the exchange. Okay, in that case, you press F2, it'll send the exchange again, and you hope he comes back with Roger, and off you go. Okay, let's see, we have just a few minutes left, time for maybe one or two questions before we have to break.
If he asks for NR, do you have to send the total exchange, or can you just send the number?
You could just send the number, but there's no function key that does that. Okay, so within the simulation, the only choice is F2. Now these function keys are programmable. You see F11 says spare. So in the real world, you could put just the number on F11 if you wanted to do that. I just worked the CQ Worldwide RIDI contest. By the way, I did it with N1MM last year and without the year before. I just used FL Digi. World of difference. N1MM was much more helpful because with RIDI you're printing. As soon as you print a call sign, it tells you whether it's a multiplier or a dupe or whatever before you even try to do anything with it. Just much better. Also, it did the log that has to be submitted in a particular format correctly, and FLDigi struggled, which meant that I struggled for an hour figuring out why the robot rejected it, and I needed to change it. So personal experience, much better. Okay, let's do the white shirt and the green shirt.
So I'm totally unfamiliar with the logging program or N1, but you're saying it also sends ready, it cues the ready for ready as well?
Okay,
What
now,
codes does this support?
in the real world, you've got to figure out how you're going to send the code. Now, there are many rigs that have ASCII to code capabilities built into the rig, and you can just program these macros to send the right stuff through a serial port to the rig. Now, if you're running a voting kind of rig, you won't have that, but for not very much money, you can buy a wing keyer or a device like that, put that in the middle, let N1MM Plus talk to the wing keyer, and it will key the rig, you know, with the appropriate message. So you do not have to learn how to send CW in order to contest in CW. How about that?